Am I the a-hole for boarding the plane and leaving without my wife? Plus updates. Original post. My wife, 43 female, and I, 47 male, have a daughter, 21 female, who goes to college out of state. We'll call my wife Meg and my daughter Jess. Jess is in her junior year of college. Over the summer, she was employed by her university and was able to stay in the dorms. After a summer, she was moving out of the dorms and into her own apartment off campus. Meg and I live in the Pacific Northwest. Jess goes to school on the East Coast. We usually go to visit Jess a couple of times throughout the semester, typically parents' weekend and move-out day. She also comes home during the holidays. Let me start by saying that traveling with my wife is not a great experience. I am very type A. I like to have everything organized and make sure that we get where we need to be early, especially when traveling. My wife is the opposite. Very go with the flow, and we'll get there when we get there. I do my best to meet in the middle, but not when traveling by plane. Last year, during Parents' Weekend, Meg and I were going to fly out to see Jess. Our flight was at 10 a.m. Our airport isn't huge, but it's not tiny either. I told my wife that we needed to be at the airport 90 minutes early, and we live about 30 minutes from the airport. This being said, I wanted to leave at the very latest by 8, since we would also need to park and walk a little bit. Of course, I got up at 6 to make sure everything was ready and accounted for. My wife does not like to get up early. It took me attempting to wake her up 5 times before she eventually got up at 7:40, then wanted to make coffee, shower, and eat a bowl of cereal. Let's just say that we didn't leave the house until 9. It ended up being busier at the airport than normal, likely due to many colleges having Parents' Weekend, and it took so long to get through the security that we missed our flight. Rightly so, the airline refused to refund our ticket. We were able to get new tickets, but not until the next day, and we missed Friday afternoon and Saturday morning with our daughter. Jess was disappointed, to say the least. Fast forward to now. We were flying down for a long weekend to help her move. We take one flight from our town to a bigger town nearby, then fly from there to my daughter's college town. Again, it was a long morning of me pushing my wife to move along. Due to the last airport mishap, I wanted to make sure I told her we needed to leave extra early so we wouldn't miss the flight again. We got there on time, with a bit of time to spare, and my wife was annoyed. She kept going on about how now we just had to sit and wait for 45 minutes for them to start boarding. We took our first flight and landed in the connecting city, at a much larger airport. We only had about a 1-hour layover. We got off the plane at 9:15, and our next plane started boarding at 9:40. We had to take multiple rails to get from where we landed to our terminal. We got to our terminal and had about 15 minutes until our plane was set to board. My wife told me that she wanted to get coffee. There was a little market next to our terminal that sold hot food and coffee. I asked if she wanted me to go grab it for her. "No, I want Starbucks," she said. Well, Starbucks was a rail ride away and a bit of a walk. I told her we couldn't do that. We didn't have enough time. She stated that we had enough time, and if I wouldn't go with her, she would go by herself. I tried to discourage her, but she was determined. She walked away, at a brisk pace for her, and said she would be back in time. 15 minutes went by, and she was nowhere to be seen. They started calling boarding groups. I called my wife, hoping she was nearby. She didn't answer. They called a few groups, then called ours. In a panic, I called my wife again, 3 times. Finally, on the last call, she answered and said she was on her way. It was a long line, and she had to wait a bit. I told her they were almost done with boarding and she needed to hurry up. I waited by the gate, but the attendant said they would need to shut the gate in 2 minutes. I waited and waited, but she didn't show up. The attendant asked if I wanted to board. Otherwise, she was closing the gate. I tried to plead with her to wait a couple more minutes, but she insisted that she couldn't. So I boarded the plane. A few minutes later, my wife called me, saying the attendant wouldn't let her on. They had already removed the boarding ramp at that point. She told me I needed to tell them to let me off the plane to be with her. And I said no. It is not fair to do this again to Jess. I said, "I told you we didn't have time, but you decided to go anyway." I told her to go purchase a new ticket for the next flight, and that I would see her when she arrived. She got to Jess's school and seemed unbothered by the whole situation. Didn't even really talk about it. I thought maybe she realized it was her fault and just wanted to drop it. Boy, was I wrong. We are now home and she hasn't talked to me since the trip, over a week ago, and is insisting that I am the a-hole. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the updates. I stopped being the caretaker for my partner after the first time we missed a flight. Told him nope, never again. The next 2 flights he missed, and man, he bitched. I explained again he's a damn adult and has choices to make. The 3rd time he missed a 10-day cruise. He's never been late again. He's pissed about it, but listens to me and gets up, ready, and out the door on time. Oh, and not the a-hole. Missed a 10-day cruise? Like all of it? This is hilarious, and I laughed harder because that was the 3rd instance. Not the a-hole. You need to make a line in the sand. Sit down and tell your wife that you love her and you cherish her, but the way she disrespects your desire to be punctual is just too much. Tell her that from now on, you're going to make separate arrangements when traveling. You are not responsible for waking her up. You are not responsible for getting her out the door. She's an adult and she can do what she wants. The first time she completely misses an event, I suspect things will change. But you've been accommodating her to such a high degree that she can act like an infant. Not even a desire to be punctual, a desire to not miss a flight, and pay again for a whole new set of plane tickets. Not the a-hole. Your wife is very selfish. Imagine missing time with your child because you thought coffee was more important. During a move, no less. The only option is to stop coddling your wife, as apparently people have been doing all her life. Leave on the dot, every time. Eventually, she'll learn to be on time or be left behind. The world doesn't revolve around her, and it's high time for her to grow up. Now for the first update. Wow, I know a lot of people say this, but I really didn't think this would get as big as it did. Thanks everyone for the responses. I have been trying to read them in batches when I have time, because I have been getting some good suggestions. I wanted to answer a couple of questions I saw as well as add a bit of extra info. As far as how she acts in other situations, she generally doesn't have any issues. She is never one to be late to work or anything like that. It just seems like travel is her poor area. I never noticed things like this until we started traveling often to see our daughter. This is why I never considered ADD or ADHD. She really shows no other signs of this. I saw posts implying that my wife might have an addiction of some sort. I'm not sure how that would line up, but I don't see that being a possibility. I didn't think the following information was important, but my daughter made a comment, and so did a friend that I discussed this with, so I thought maybe I would mention it here. Jess is not Meg's daughter. I was married once before, and my wife unfortunately passed away due to complications during Jess's birth. I remarried Meg when my daughter was 6. My daughter made a comment that Meg doesn't want to come to see or help her, and that is why she is always running late. But I have offered to go alone, and Meg was always very against that idea, so I wouldn't think that is the case. I can't say that Meg and Jess have had the easiest relationship. Meg always wanted to have another child, but we were unable to conceive. She did make comments that she wanted children of her own, and that caused a little rift in our relationship at the time because I wanted her to see Jess as her daughter. But they really never had the typical mother-daughter relationship. It was always very much pushed that Jess was my daughter. Meg did make comments about being excited to have an empty nest, but I assumed this was just because we would have more room. Jess is a great kid and really never says anything bad about anyone, but she has made comments before stating that she thinks Meg is jealous of her, but this never made sense to me. She has also told me that she doesn't want Meg to come to her school for Parents' Weekend, as she would rather spend it just with me or wait for Father's Weekend. But Meg always says she wants to go, and I have never gone without her. This being said, I have never seen any negativity directed at Jess from Meg, or resentment. Maybe I am missing something? You're definitely missing something, sorry. Your daughter is right. Your wife is jealous of your daughter. Go without her as your daughter has requested. Your wife isn't going to see Jess because she wants to see her herself. It is so you and Jess don't spend time together without her. Sounds like your daughter hasn't wanted to rock the boat so far, but the dynamic is very, very clear. The fact that your daughter noticed should be enough reason for you. I wouldn't trust Meg with your daughter. Make sure you leave everything to your daughter in your will, because if your wife acts this crazy when it comes to your daughter, I'd never trust her not completely writing her out of the will after you pass away. Listen to your daughter. Now for the second update. Hi everyone, thanks again for all the advice. I read as many of the comments as I could and took in all the information. I wanted to provide an update. My wife finally started talking to me again. When she did, I told her that I wanted to have a conversation about the situation, but I wanted to give it a couple of days for emotions to settle down. Some of the comments here gave me a great idea, and I wanted to see what she thought about it. For all future trips, I will have my tickets, and she will have hers. I typically drive to the airport and leave my car in one of the pay lots, so I would drive myself and she could Uber. She will have all the freedom she wants to do what she wants. But it is up to her to arrive on time and board the plane. I let her know that it was starting to feel like I needed to keep track of both of us. I phrased it in a way to make it sound like I didn't want to be controlling over her and let her manage her own time. She wasn't happy with this, but she reluctantly agreed. Now to get to the bigger issue that I didn't realize we had until reading the comments of this post. Call me oblivious, but I really never thought there was any issue between Meg and Jess. After talking to my wife, she wouldn't admit to any issues and stated that she would never intentionally delay a flight so that we couldn't see our daughter, and acted offended that I would ask such a thing. If that was her actual purpose, I don't think I would be able to prove it, but it will be at the forefront of my mind in the future. After talking to Meg and Jess, we decided on the following. Meg and I will be visiting Jess on Parents' Weekend, but I will be attending Father's Weekend from now on, and I will be attending by myself to get some alone time with Jess. Jess seemed very excited, and surprisingly, Meg didn't seem to have an issue with that this time. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to read and give me advice. I really appreciate everything, and I hope these steps can work towards a resolution for the issues. Wishing you all the best, of course, but be careful. It seems, from my perspective, which is limited to the information you have given us, that your wife only tolerated your daughter and wants to keep you away from her now that she's an adult. I saw a similar post about a soon-to-be wife with a stepdaughter. The new wife was expecting for her soon-to-be husband to be a seasonal parent after the wedding. Of course, you have been married for a long time and everything seemed normal to you, but I would recommend reaching out to your daughter to ask for her perspective growing up with her stepmom. Agree. We obviously only have limited info, but I wouldn't be surprised if his wife has been counting down the days until they were free of his daughter. I've seen this before. Someone marrying a person with kids, never letting on they had no real affection for the child, patiently waiting over a decade for the kid to be a legal adult, thinking he could essentially cut his wife off on their 18th birthday. OP, I've seen this play out before. Of course, she'll never admit to not liking your daughter or to doing anything negative toward her. She'll act like she really cares for her, is worried about her, or misses her, while giving her snide comments on the side, poking at her in ways that seem like she's just concerned or giving advice or sabotaging chances for you to see her. And your daughter, as your child, will never admit it to you if she feels slighted by her, because you're happy and your wife makes you happy, and she would never want to mess that up for you, so she'll just endure. But she's slowly been letting you know. Talk to one of your daughter's best friends. Ask them what they think. Ask people who are constantly around you if they've seen any type of behavior from your wife toward your daughter. Look, I'm hoping that's not the case, but to me that's what it sounds like is going on here. Last story. Am I the a-hole for calling my boyfriend an idiot because he won't get a colonoscopy, even though his mom had colon cancer? So my boyfriend, 33 male, has a family history of colorectal cancer. His mom was diagnosed in her early 40s, and it was really bad. She survived, but it was a long, awful ordeal. He was old enough to remember it. Because of that, his doctor told him he should start colonoscopies earlier than most people. He's technically overdue for his first one, and lately, he's had some weird stomach problems. I've been telling him for a year to get it checked out. He keeps saying things like, "It's embarrassing, I'm too young, what if they find something bad?" Like, yes, that's the point of the test. The other night we got into it because he mentioned again that his stomach has been bothering him. I told him point blank, "You're being an idiot. Your mom went through hell with this, and you're ignoring your chance to be healthy." I also said that if he won't take care of himself, I don't know if I can plan a long-term future with him because I don't want to lose a partner to something that could have been caught early. He got really upset and accused me of being controlling and dramatic. Now he's barely speaking to me. I feel like I was harsh, but honestly, I'm scared. The news has story after story of people dying from this because they ignored it too long. People his age too. I'd rather him be mad at me than bury him in 10 years. Am I the a-hole for calling him an idiot and making this an ultimatum? Now for the comments. I also said that if he won't take care of himself, I don't know if I can plan a long-term future with him because I don't want to lose a partner to something that could have been caught early. This is what a boundary is, folks. Please take notes. Not the a-hole. You were harsh, yes, but justifiably so. It's okay to be harsh. Being harsh does not equal being mean. Sometimes we have to be cruel, blunt, and firm to be kind. He needs to understand what is on the line is more than the embarrassment of being sedated, with a camera up your butt for a bit. I'm watching a friend slowly die from colon cancer. He resisted getting a colonoscopy for years, and when he finally had one, they found stage 4. I fully support your ultimatum. 100%. My dad was dead before 50 because he self-diagnosed himself with hemorrhoids and refused to go get an exam until it was too late. He was stage 4 at that point. He died a few months later. He left a widow alone to raise 2 teenagers. My grandfather had his first polyp removed in his early 40s and passed away from complications around his colon in his 80s. Those 40 years had screenings and medical appointments, but they also had his wife and daughter, his grandchildren, and a whole half of a life. I get that it's scary to think about cancer, but the mentality of ignorance is bliss is the equivalent of a 2-year-old believing they are invisible when they close their eyes. We live in an era where screening is easier than ever before, and I genuinely hope more people realize treatment is way less scary and painful than a slow, painful, preventable death. I'm sorry for your friend and those around him. It's a very hard thing to go through for everyone involved.